Hi everyone, and welcome back. Today we are joined by Anthony Aguilar, a retired lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army who served for 25 years as a combat infantry officer in the Special Forces. So welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be speaking with you today. Thank you.
Well, thank you. You have quite an extensive background, again, with your 25 years, but you've been deployed many times to places like Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, Cambodia, Vietnam, Kazakhstan, and Tajikistan. And of course, you've seen combat many times, wounded in service. Then retired. But you were then also sent to work in Gaza to assist then with this distribution of humanitarian aid. And if I'm not mistaken, you're working for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. And I really wanted to explore a bit about what the job entailed, what you actually saw there, and some of the things we heard about the actual food distribution and the killing which has happened there. But I thought a good place to start might be what was your actual job, or what would it entail?
So when I was hired under the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, there are two contract entities underneath the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation that are actually conducting the humanitarian aid in Israel and Gaza. Safe Reach Solutions, and then underneath Safe Reach Solutions was a company called UG Solutions that was responsible for the armed security to deliver and secure the food. So I was hired by UG Solutions, and I was hired to be a security contractor to secure the food delivery and also secure the sites. And I was under the impression, as it was explained to me, that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation would be subsuming the entire UN presence and providing community-based food distribution, providing everything that the UN was doing, that we would be going into Gaza and replacing that, since the United Nations was blocked from going in by the Israeli government. So upon my initial impressions and thoughts, I really wanted to be a part of um, feeding and providing food to people that were in desperate need. It was, at that point, it was no question to me that the people in Gaza were starving, and that there was need, and that there was an absolute requirement to bring in food and water and baby formula and all the things that society would need to function, and then that wasn't going in. And regardless of the who was blocking who, or who couldn't go in and who could, those are all decisions that are far beyond my control. And I felt that what I could control is at least being a part of providing food to the Palestinians of Gaza. And so that's how the job was presented to me. That's how I was prepared to go into Gaza. That was not the case, but that is what I was assumed.
Well, as we know, there hasn't been that much of a media presence. A lot of the Palestinian journalists, as well as many foreign, have been killed. But still, there's a lot of imagery coming out through social media, though. I was just wondering what did you see there in terms of, um, in terms of I guess, the humanitarian disaster, and how would it compare to your previous deployments?
So the first question on media or reporters, um, not only does the IDF, but the GHF blocks and restricts any type of large Western media presence or any type of unbiased media coverage. As we're all aware from what's happened in the throughout Gaza, the reporters, they have been killed, deliberately targeted and killed. And the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, their position is that it's too dangerous to bring in reporters to the sites because of the security situation. Yet the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation will bring in internet influencers who have no experience in environments like that, who are bringing them in is a danger to not only them but the mission, because they're a liability, they're a risk because they don't know what they're doing. Whereas Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and the IDF won't allow seasoned combat photographers, reporters, people that have survived and been in some pretty violent and threatening predicaments, can't go in because it's not safe enough. But the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation will bring in internet influencers. So I think the world needs to take a really hard, critical look at that. That when an entity or an occupier, or the tool of the occupation, such as the GHF, refuses for reporters or for unbiased media to go in and see, that we should be very concerned as to what's truly going on. That is a telltale sign of tyrannical, oppressive behavior when the oppressor does not allow media in. That's a hallmark of tyranny, and that the world should be concerned about that. To the second question about the actual aid itself and the aid on the sites, we were not taking over the humanitarian. We were not taking over the humanitarian or the United Nations humanitarian community-based humanitarian assistance, humanitarian aid. There were 400 sites under the UN mechanism, with 550 trucks every day going into Gaza to sustain the population. Between sometime in mid-March to the 26th of May, nothing was going in. When the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation began operations on the 26th of May, we were running 4 sites. 4 sites. 1% of the entire mechanism that was previously in place. Impossible to service the population with 4 sites. Now, there are only 3 sites. The site in the north, Netzarim Corridor site, has been closed because the IDF have occupied it to conduct military operations in the north. They've used that old site from that was once distribution. They've now turned that into a headquarters for the IDF operating in the north. The 3 remaining sites, all the way in the south, the furthest possibly south that you can be in Gaza, on the border of Egypt, where no one is living because the entire area has been bombed and razed to the ground and leveled, and no one lives there. There's no people there. So for the 3 sites that exist now, the distribution site 1 and distribution site 2 have been turned into this large encampment, a village, or an encampment to concentrate the population to the south. So a large encampment to concentrate the population from where they live in central and north to the south. And then site 3 is still there. And then they've now built 4 and 5. So in the layman's terms, you would think there's 5 sites. There's not. There's still only 3, because they closed number 4 from earlier, built a new 4, and they took 1 and 2 and put them together. So you have 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's only 4 in the south, not 5. There never was 5. And the way that they're operating now, they're operating as a concentration hub for all of the Palestinians to be put into this encampment. So the humanitarian aid, the actual food that we were bringing in, we were only bringing in dried food goods, raw form, dry food, rice, beans, lentils, fava beans, pasta noodles. All of these things require water to cook, water to prepare. And we were providing no water. Imagine the entire population of Gaza, and the only mechanism that is bringing humanitarian aid into Gaza is bringing no water, no baby formula, no perishable ready-to-eat food, no hygiene products, no propane fuel, no way to generate or to have electricity such as generators or solar panels, nothing. Nothing but dried food goods that require water to prepare to a people that once they come to these sites in phase one of this operation. Now the GHF had a deliberately planned operation, which then upon seeing behind the curtain I came to realize that this was deliberate. Phase one, prepare the sites, test the sites, bring people to the sites, see how the sites work, how many people can come and go. Phase two, operate the sites on a rotational basis, site 1 and 3, site 2 and 4, site 1, just site 1, no sites at all, completely keeping the population in confusion and off guard as to what sites will be open. That was planned. That wasn't something that just happened because of the situation. That was planned. Phase 3, concentrate the population to the south into this concentrated encampment area and clear all of Gaza, with the GHF being the receiver of all these people, if you will. And through that, in this 2.7 kilometer encampment, where the entire population will be concentrated in the south, hear those words, an encampment where the entire population will be concentrated. That is a concentration camp by definition. So the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has now built and established a concentration camp, a 2.7 kilometer concentration camp in the south, where all the Palestinians will be moved to and survive. I don't say live, I say survive. No running water, no electricity, open running sewage because there's no sewage, no hospitals because the only hospital left in the south, Nasser Hospital, had a tank round put through it and a missile put through it last week. So no functioning medical, no schools, no functioning mosques or any religious sites for religion. All of these things that are guaranteed to human beings, civilians, food, water, religious services, education, medical, all these things are being denied to them. And it's not an accident. It was designed this way. And the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, with the IDF as the client of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation through a contract, a for-profit, hundreds of millions of dollars contract. The United States put tax dollars into this to a private company that is now responsible for the concentration of the entire Palestinian population and will be responsible for their slow death to annihilation. One of two things will happen, or both. The remaining surviving population will be slowly killed through starvation, disease. Think about an entire population in an area this small with no running water and no running sewage and no essentials for municipality. You have dysentery sets in. That kills thousands. Polio is on the rise. That will kill thousands. Through disease, starvation, and famine, and the continual bombing, there won't be many Palestinians left alive. And those Palestinians are either going to be transferred to another place or left to slowly die. And that's not happening in weeks or months or years. That's happening right now. Right now. Before we celebrate Thanksgiving in the United States or celebrate the holidays, if we don't act as a world, as a community, as an international community, Palestine and the Palestinians will cease to exist. We're at the precipice of a genocide that the world is watching.
How do we end up in this situation? Look, who is this humanitarian organization, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which then bans media, sets up, so few distribution centers. You say to concentrate the population, do not clear territory, does not provide water. Again, you said a concentration camp. I guess can also be called an extermination camp. Then, who is the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation? Because it sounds more like they're operating a concentration or death camp than an actual humanitarian organization.
Well, if you think about all of the realistic elements, the components, not what's said in the media or what Chapin Fay, the PR spokesman for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, says, who quite frankly has no idea what he's talking about in either a military or humanitarian aid perspective. He's just a mouthpiece. The reality is that human beings are being forcefully displaced as their homes are destroyed, their livelihoods are destroyed, crops, municipalities, sewage, generators, pump destroyed, being brought to an area of concentration that the GHF is not only responsible for, but is implementing. They're the ones doing it. It was part of their plan. So who is this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation? If you look at it, you would expect that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation would care about Gaza, that they would have humanitarians working in their organization, and there would be a foundation where you can actually see where they get their money and how they operate. They are neither of those. They are none of those three. They are not the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. They don't care about Gaza. They don't care about doing any humanitarian work. And for all means, legally in an entity, they're not a foundation because nobody knows where they get their money from. So you have this cloak and dagger secretive organization who at the top of it, who sits at the very top, is a man, Johnny Moore, who refers to himself. I did not know this until recently when I was trying to figure out that same question. What is the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation? So the man in charge of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is a self-proclaimed, self-identified leader in the Christian Zionist movement. Safe Reach Solutions, the contract underneath it. The person that runs Safe Reach Solutions is a longtime friend of Johnny Moore and recently is retired from a long career in the Special Activities Division of the CIA. The Special Activities Division of the CIA, that's the organization that sets up front companies. That's the organization that does black operations. That's the part of the CIA that the CIA is afraid of. And then you have UG Solutions. The man in charge of the security contract in Gaza from UG Solutions is a self-proclaimed Christian Zionist and is the national president of an organization called the Infidels Motorcycle Club, who proclaim the fight against jihad and demand an annihilation of all Muslims. That's who's running humanitarian aid in Gaza. The organization that is providing no food, no water, allowing Palestinians to be killed and slaughtered at their sites, who are now in charge of running a concentration camp. So when you look at the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, it is an extremist organization, a religious extremist organization funded by the United States government, money given to them to be the IDF's client. So the United States dollar is going to a company that is a client of a foreign government who is now participating in the open and clear every aspect of a genocide, war crimes, displacing the population to an extent now that they are not surviving, starvation, famine. These are not things that Tony Aguilar made up. These are things that the world has declared and proclaimed. And further to the point, the United Nations, the entire reason the Israeli government stopped the United Nations from delivering aid from Rafah, from Erez, from all the checkpoints to 400 sites was because they were giving all the food to Hamas. The Israeli government themselves has come out in the last 2 weeks to say that is not true. There is no evidence for that. The United Nations has identified that. UNRWA has identified that. U.S. organizations, Western European organizations, independent Israeli organizations, not just the Israeli government, have all come out to say there's no evidence of that. So why is the UN not going back in? Because the Israelis and the GHF do not have an intent to feed the population. Their intent is to continue starvation and forced displacement until every Palestinian is concentrated in the south and he's either dead or negotiations are in place to send them somewhere else. And we've all heard that in the news, where it's going to be. I would recommend to everyone listening, Go read up on Cyprus and the land that's been purchased in Cyprus by conglomerates of the GHF. 200 acres purchased in eastern Cyprus. Why? Why? Ask those questions, because to me, it's absolutely clear through intent and evidence that this is the blueprint of a designed genocide, a modern day Holocaust that is occurring in front of our eyes on national media every day. We see it. When a hospital is blown up and Israel says, oops, didn't mean to, and the world looks the other way. Reporters are killed, not one, not two, not three, but 20, 30, 40, and the world looks the other way. Thousands are starving to death. Famine. And the world looks the other way. Right now, Israel has realized that the world will continue to look the other way for a little while longer. So they've rushed now to finish this operation. And the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, run and led by a Christian Zionist, who at the tip of the spear, who is armed with a weapon giving out food, is run by a Christian Zionist individual that calls himself an infidel. To the people of the world, that's who we're having provide humanitarian aid into Gaza. I would ask you to reflect on that and look at yourself in the mirror and ask, what are we doing?
Yeah, I also wanted to ask you though about the IDF's treatment of civilians, because again, there's no media, real media presence anymore, as you also pointed out. So it's very difficult to get information out, and also the narrative control is quite intense. But again, that's why it's a bit unique, what you have seen, given that, again, you're a decorated combat veteran from the Special Forces. You served your whole life for your country. You've been deployed over and over again. So that makes you a very credible voice, given that you're not just that you're not political background, but also that you have this expertise in how to conduct war. So so it's a bit it's very unique, especially in this. I'm not sure if it should be called war. It seems very one-sided. But how do you see the treatment of the civilians by IDF, and especially at the distribution centers where you were deployed to, again, look after the security?
The Israeli government and the IDF, not just the IDF, but the Israeli government, have taken great measure to dehumanize the people of Gaza, to dehumanize the Palestinians, to try to convince the world that Palestinians aren't real. They don't exist. It's not a real thing. They're not people. They're animals. They're terrorists. They're all Hamas. They're all evil. And the reflections you see in terms of the life in Gaza, their homes are blown apart and they're living in tents. The UN isn't in there, so those tent cities, so to speak, are falling into complete destitution. And you see videos of people that are starving, pictures of people that are starving. Israel and the IDF have gone to great lengths to dehumanize through that narrative. And that narrative is played every day. But the GHF is part of that narrative because the sites that are run further dehumanize the population. Thousands of Palestinians rushing onto one site to grab minuscule amounts of food, crawl and beg for food. They have to crawl on the ground to pick up scraps of food that's remaining if they got there late. They have to, beg for whatever food is available. And when they get there and they're begging for water and there's no water, the GHF is part of the dehumanization design process. They're a part of it. So how does the IDF treat civilians in Gaza? Like their lives don't matter. They shoot at them. They shoot machine guns and tank rounds and artillery and mortars at the civilian crowds, unarmed civilians that are starving, to control the crowd. That's inhumane. Not only is that inhumane, it is a clear violation of the protocols of the Geneva Convention. And UG Solutions contractors, SRS contractors, GHF, that's in Gaza, are taking part in that. UG Solutions personnel have adopted the escalation of force methods of the IDF. Don't talk, don't communicate, shoot at them. So now UG Solutions personnel fire tear gas, stun grenades, rubber shotgun bullets, fire at them to move the crowd or to direct them to a certain direction or another. So imagine, if you will, if you came up to an intersection and it's a T intersection and there's no sign telling you what way to go, and you've never been where you're going, and you get to that intersection, you're like, where do I go? And in order to communicate to you to go left or right, someone starts shooting at you. So all you know is, well, I shouldn't go that way. So then you run that way. And at the next turn, they're shooting at you. Just imagine, with thousands of people, 20 to 30,000 people in an area, of stampeding and chaos, being shot at to direct a crowd while you're being hit with stun grenades that emit tear gas. I've been hit with these tear gas stun grenades. They're debilitating. You can't see. It's chaotic. It's chaos, and it's designed chaos. The IDF and the Israeli government do not see Palestinians as humans, and they're continuing to dehumanize them, and they treat them just that way, like animals that don't exist and don't have the right to live. That's how they're treated. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, America, the United States, is part of that dehumanization process every day.
This is often referred to as a war on civilians. And well, what are you referring to? The lack of discrimination between civilians and armed combatants. Of course, it goes against all laws of war, but the dehumanization process, which you speak of, is very much built into the language. And I guess that's one of the more disturbing aspects of this. That is, it's very difficult to prove genocide because you have to prove intent. But you see from the Israeli leadership, they keep making the same references to them almost as a cancer or as a plague in society, as you said, not even humans. But do you also see this kind of language on the ground? Because you were there, with the different people from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. You work there. You see the IDF. Do you hear the same kind of language from the IDF when they refer to all the Palestinians?
Every day. I mean, in one incident, the 24th of May, the first day any Americans had seen the distribution sites. The distribution sites prior to the 24th of May, through late March, April, and May, the sites were being built by the IDF. The IDF identified where the sites would be, picked the locations where the sites would be, built the sites. No Americans from GHF, Boston Consulting Group, Safe Reach Solutions, UG Solutions, the U.S. Embassy, no one had been to these sites. So when we went to these sites for the first time and saw them, the way that the sites were built and where they are, the IDF there was an IDF patrol. So around the sites, around each sites 1, 2, and 3, there was combat operations, Gideon's Chariots, an offensive combat operation, fighting going on in those areas. I was at site number 1, and I was in the tower looking to the northwest, and an Israeli squad, an infantry squad, was on patrol out there. They were resting in the shade of the berm because these sites were built up with these 20-foot berms around it, and they were resting in the shade of the berm. And I was up in the tower, and I saw them down there, and I said hello, and they looked up at me and they said, "Oh, the Americans are coming." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm an American. I'm here from UG Solutions, and we're going to provide aid." And he's like, and one of the IDF was like, why are you feeding our enemies? Why are you here to give our enemies food? You're just making this harder on us. We could have them all dead and be done, but you're feeding our enemy. So that perception of every Palestinian is Hamas, that's part of the dehumanization. That's part of the narrative to dehumanize the population, that every boy, girl, man, woman, child, elderly, and everything in between are all Hamas. And That's obviously not true, but the perception of saying that everyone must die, they're all Hamas, wipe the face of the earth, start over, get all the Palestinians out of here, either kill them or get them out. That's ethnic cleansing by definition. Genocide, every aspect of the genocide that exists, to your point, sir, which is a great point, you then have to tie intent. Like, if I kill somebody, someone has died, but there's levels of intent, right? Like, was it premeditated? Was it an accident? Have you been planning on it for years? Is it a conspiracy? Is, you have to determine intent. What I would say is that the actual execution and the mechanism of this, because it was planned from the beginning, planned from the very, very beginning, to dislocate, to displace, to starve, to provide not just enough food to make it look like you're feeding them, but they're still slowly dying. That was all designed. That was all intended. That was on purpose. So when you look at the design and how it's played out from March to April to May to June to July to August and now going into September, the intent is demonstrated by the fact that they had a plan and they're executing that plan. That is intentional. There is nothing accidental about it. The starvation, the famine, the displacement, the indiscriminate killing isn't an unfortunate aspect of war. Believe me, I've been in a lot of war. Never a war that I fought in was there ever just the complete disregard for targeting or civilian population, or the complete disregard for human beings in the civilian population. Never, never. So if any American soldier or veteran or politician or anybody says that's just an unfortunate part of war, I say, you don't know what you're talking about. And you should be ashamed of yourself. So furthermore, to look at it, I give this analogy sometimes. On the 23rd of March of 2019, in Baghuz-Sakani, Syria, Iraq-Syria border, right at the Euphrates River, is where the caliphate, the ISIS caliphate, was defeated, where the last fighting forces of ISIS, organized fighting forces, the battalions of ISIS in northeast Syria, surrendered. And the fighting had been from the north through Raqqa, through Darwazar, through Baghuz-Sakani, through this whole area. Intense fighting. Our partners' force had been killed. Americans had been killed. Intense fighting. Every reason to have hatred and vengeance. And when the last remaining fighters from ISIS surrendered in the magnitude of thousands, we didn't shoot them and kill them and starve them. We fed them. We gave them water. We treated their medical needs. We ensured their safety and their security and their safe passage moving to the Al-Hol in displaced persons camp for the civilians, and to holding areas, detention facilities for the ISIS fighters. We took great effort in that, because that is humanitarian law. For anyone that says that this war, there is no humanitarian law in war, there are no rules in war, no. And for any veteran that says there are no rules in war, well, when I was in war, I shot at kids and killed kids, those individuals should be brought back into active duty, court-martialed, and sent to Leavenworth, because that's a war crime. Israel is a signature to the protocols of the Geneva Convention. There's no excuse. It is deliberate. It is intentional. What is happening from the highest levels are war crimes, crimes against humanity, war crimes, violations of the laws of armed conflict, LOAC, violations of the laws of land warfare. It's crystal clear. And the world has to take action. The international community has to take action, because if we don't, it's going to continue to happen. Israel has no intent of stopping.
Just seems like the humanitarian efforts and mission has been outsourced from the UN to the people who are actually carrying out the genocide. This is I mean, kind of remarkable. But when they, well, in their language, they refer to all the civilians as Hamas to justify this kind of treatment. How does that apply to children, though? Do they see the same treatment being given to children? Because surely, it would be very difficult to argue that very young, small children will be Hamas. Is there any exception here?
No exception that I saw. Especially from the Israeli perspective and the IDF perspective, that children are just future Hamas. That if those children are able to grow and become adults, they'll be Hamas. Everyone must die. Everyone must leave. Everyone must be terminated in this fight, whether it's through killing or through displacement, moving them somewhere else. Everybody is Hamas. From infants to the elderly, everybody is Hamas. UG Solutions contractors that are on the ground in Gaza slowly but surely bought into this same thought, in that women, children, the elderly, they have no value. They're all Hamas. Everybody's Hamas. Look at the narrative that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation themselves espouse. Listen to the language that they use. It's very telling. For example, on the 16th of July, site number 3, 20 Palestinians were killed, trampled to death. 20. Trampled or suffocated to death. GHF even admitted this. It's not a secret. But in that, GHF's response to it was, oh, it was Hamas that did that. Everything is Hamas. If it rains, it's Hamas. If it's too hot outside, it's Hamas. If someone dies of starvation, it was Hamas. If someone dies from an Israeli bomb, it was Hamas. If someone gets shot trying to pick up food, well, they were picking up food and they looked like Hamas while they were doing it. They were picking up the food like Hamas would pick up food. Like, it is absurd. And unfortunately, for a long time now, the world has believed it, to include senior U.S. representatives such as Ambassador Mike Huckabee or Special Envoy Mr. Witkoff, who say things, who repeat those same things. There's no starvation. There isn't a famine. Well, they're getting blown up and being shot because they're Hamas. Well, it's because of Hamas. Hamas did that. Hamas did this. In the entire time that I was there on the ground, I didn't just work at one site. I worked at all 4 sites, and I worked distribution and delivery. I spent time at both operational command sites. I spent time at all 4 distribution sites. I spent time driving along every route. Not once did I ever see anyone armed at all, nor did I ever see anyone who was proclaiming or identified to be Hamas. Not only that, in the entire time that I spent at every site, I was never in any way even threatened or perceived a threat or felt hostility against me in any way. Never experienced that once, not even close. And I was at every site for all rotations of distribution at each site. I saw all of it from beginning to end. Never perceived a threat. So this perception of that, well, everybody's Hamas, that's a lie. The perception of there's no starvation, there isn't a famine, that's a lie. The thought of they don't need water, there's water in Gaza, that's a lie. So the world needs to wake up to these lies, to realize that if we wake up too late, the proof will be in the actual execution. There will be no Palestinians left. I hate, I'm very, very concerned because Operation Gideon's Chariots 2 was not supposed to begin until the end of September, with the call-up and the training of 60,000 additional IDF reservists. They bumped that timeline up to the end of August. Operation Gideon's Chariots 2 has already started. The bombing campaign, the tanks, pushing north of the Netzarim corridor into southern Gaza City. That's happened. That is happening. By the end of September, that operation will be concluded because they're also not only maneuvering from the south, they've added additional forces to maneuver from the north. So if for anyone out there that studies history and maneuver, they have a maneuver element from the north, a maneuver from the south, and they're both moving to the west. That's called if you look at that from a military term, that's a pincher movement, where you're bringing pressure and pushing everybody out down south to the concentration camp. That's happening right now. As we speak, as we talk here today, as you wake up tomorrow morning, that is happening. By the end of September, Operation Gideon's Chariots 2 will be concluded, and then will be the back clearing, which will just be systemic bombing. Thousands will be dead. Thousands will be dead. Thus far, since I've talked to the media and I've come out on the record, I've made it clear that here's the plan. They're going to displace, and then they're going to build a concentration camp. They've done it. They're going to launch operations into Gaza City. There will not be a ceasefire. They will not accept a ceasefire. They're going to go into Gaza City and they're going to clear every street. They're doing that. My fear is that by mid to the end of September, I'll myself and others will be, I told you so. I told you so. And it'll be too late because there'll be no Palestinians left. So we're running out of time to take action, and it's very much a reality that in our lifetimes, we will witness a modern day Holocaust. We will witness a modern day genocide. We will witness on display to the eyes of the world the killing of over 2 million people. And for anybody that thinks that that can't happen, I would ask you, even in our history of a modern society, my grandparents lived through it. My grandparents were alive when World War II happened, when the ghettos of Warsaw, Poland were consolidated and then displaced. There were over 2 million people consolidated in the ghettos, systemically displaced in a matter of a week. To think that it can't happen to 2 million in a matter of the remaining months, it will, it can, and it's happening. And we only need to look back one generation in our history to see that it's real. We only need to look at the images and the reports and the bombing and the death and the killing of reporters right in front of our eyes to see that it's real. And if we don't take action soon, as an international community, we will be on the wrong side of history, because we cannot say we did not know. We cannot say we didn't see it. We cannot say we weren't aware. We know it. We're aware of it. We see it, and we're doing nothing.
You describe this efforts to squeeze the population in, to move it. I've been told that a lot of the things the IDF does to make sure that people don't try to go back is essentially to destroy everything that's left behind in terms of infrastructure. I was wondering, how much did you see of the infrastructure there? What sort of condition is it at the moment?
So in my experience in the military, I saw Fallujah, and I thought I'd never see anything worse. Fallujah, Iraq, and I saw Mosul after the pushing ISIS from northern Iraq into Syria, and I thought then, well, I'll never see anything worse than this. And then in Syria, when I went through Raqqa, where there was a large battle and bombing, and ISIS destroyed a lot of stuff on their way out. Nothing compares to the level of destruction and just absolute annihilation that I witnessed in Gaza. And not only do they bomb the buildings, and you've seen the videos, you've seen the pictures of just mountains of rubble, not even where cities once stood, where buildings and apartment complexes 10, 15 stories high once stood, are now just mountains of rubble. And you see these paths cut through them. Those paths weren't original roads. Those paths cut through have been the IDF using the D9 bulldozer, giant bulldozer. If you recently read about 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, Caterpillar has cut off funding to allow the IDF to use their bulldozers anymore. It's a Caterpillar D9 bulldozer that they build onto and make into this mega dozer. Caterpillar pulled out and said, we're not going to support it anymore. They use these bulldozers to just plow paths through the rubble to make roads for the IDF to move through. So everything that you see in Gaza is mountains of rubble with paths cut through. And then after these buildings are destroyed, they come through piece by piece. If you look at all of southern Rafah, southern Gaza and southern Rafah, south of the Marag corridor, where buildings and cities and neighborhoods once stood, green trees and green grass, it is leveled to the ground, flat, cleared out, leveled. They're doing that in the central. They're doing that. The Netzarim corridor in the north used to only be 4.5 kilometers wide. It's now 7 kilometers wide. The entire length of Gaza is only 26.3 kilometers long, and they've made the Netzarim 7 kilometers wide. The entire thing in the Netzarim, from the coast to the border, is leveled. They're doing that from the central north, now from the central south, to connect what they've already done. It's happening. So I was in site number 3. Site number 3 in the south, in the southern part of Khan Yunis, near where kind of eastern Rafah used to be, which is gone. To get to that site, we had to go through the remnants and kind of the hills of rubble to get to site number 3. And there was one of these D9 dozer drivers there who was driving one of these big dozers. And these bulldozers are just massive. They're just like hard to believe when you see them. So I was looking at one of them and I was like, man, this is unbelievable engineering. And one of the guys that was driving it had gotten down out of there, and he was talking to us because we were moving our convoy through. And he wasn't IDF. He was a contractor, not a GHF contractor, but a contractor from, the Israel had contract bulldozer driver. And they were getting paid $1,500 US, $1,500 US per every house they dozed and cleared. There's a lot of money being made off of this, and they are flattening and clearing the entire thing. So your reports and what you've heard about after they bomb, they then just doze it and clear it, that is absolutely correct.
Well, I guess my last question is just about what can you say the world community should do something, because it will be too late. But usually, what you need in a situation like this is again, why you have open societies is usually recognize you have transparency, you need accountability, you have to air out the mistakes in order to correct something like this, because the whole setup here of outsourcing humanitarian mission to the ones carrying out the genocide, it's quite grotesque. So what is it that you recommend? Again, it's not many people who have been there who's in your situation. What is the, I guess, solution to this horror show?
For the long term, I don't know. I'm not a political scientist or a politician or a diplomat. I don't know what the long term is. But for right now and for the immediate future, the world must condemn the starvation. Don't just acknowledge it. We've already acknowledged it. Now there's starvation. Now there's famine. Do something about it. Condemn it. Every nation so far has come just up to the edge and tippy-toed and then comes back. Just up to the edge and tippy-toes and then comes back. Well, if you don't stop, we might recognize Palestine at the UN in September. If you don't stop, we're going to send you a mean letter through the embassy. If you don't stop, we might sanction you. Stop with the mights and maybes. Do it. Condemn the displacement and the starvation. Condemn it. By condemning that, by demanding that the United Nations be allowed back in to run and reestablish 400 sites. Do away with the GHF. Should not be a part of anything going forward, because the GHF isn't even a small humanitarian operation. It's not humanitarian at all. It's part of the displacement. It's the bait. It's the bait and trap. Get rid of the GHF. Bring in the United Nations. Demand that. The world needs to stand together as a united front, every nation, and demand it. Right now, you have France saying some things, Germany saying some things, UK saying some things, America kind of not really saying much because the president said there's starvation. But then Ambassador Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, said there's no starvation. It's not a united message. Everybody needs to be on the same page. We're watching, we acknowledge it, we condemn it, and we condemn those actions. Here are the consequences. And it must be done, not talked about, not tippy-toed and walked back from. Letters of admonishment or letters of demarche from embassy to embassy saying, oh, we don't like you anymore, we don't like you anymore, or if you don't do this, you can't come to our Christmas party. Stop that. Do something about it. The greatest nations of the world are saying that collectively we can't put an end to this. We all know that's not true. We all know that's not true. And if we think that we're going to sit back and watch this and that it's not going to be the worst case scenario, I would ask everybody to simply look at what's already happened. A year ago, we're getting close to a famine. It won't happen. Well, they will never do it. We'll pull them back from the edge. Well, now there's a famine. They'll never level all of Gaza City and go into Jabalia and Gaza City. Nope, they're doing it. They'll never move the population in mass from where they live into one area. They're doing it. So how much more are we going to say that it won't happen? It won't happen. It won't happen. It is happening. It's already too late for many. And if we don't take action, condemn these actions, condemn the start. If there's so many things to condemn, but if you can condemn like a finite point, condemn the displacement, condemn the starvation. You do that by immediately bringing in the United Nations to community-based sites so that people can stay where they are and the people have food. Then we can start having a conversation as a collective community about how the war ends or what the identity or a two-state solution or whatever that is. Then we can have those conversations, which should be had, absolutely. But right now, if we don't stop the genocide, the displacement, the starvation, none of those conversations will matter. And I'm telling, hand to God, I am telling the world, there will not be a Palestinian state to recognize in September. There will not, or in later September, excuse me. There will not be a Palestinian people to fight for. There will not, and that's not just for the Palestinians. Imagine this for the world. For the world. If what's happening in Gaza, that our governments are looking the other way, to all the governments of the world, guess what? It can happen where you live. To every American who thinks that that's just something that happens far, far away, once genocide has been normalized, starvation, displacement, indiscriminate killing, it will come. It will come to a neighborhood near you. Mark my words. And for Americans and others that may be involved in this, if we get pulled into a greater war on behalf of Israel because of what's happening now, because we're a part of it, when American soldiers come home in flag-draped coffins, do not say you didn't know. Do not say you wish you could have done something. Do not put your yellow ribbon on the door and pretend to support the troops, because you can do something right now to prevent that. If every American voice makes it known and the world condemns the starvation and the displacement, that's all I'm asking right now. Can't we all agree as a humanity? Is just a baseline. Can't we agree that starving and killing children is bad? Can we all just agree on that? Like, if we can agree on that one thing to then stop the displacement and the starvation, there will be a Palestinian people to then represent. then we can have those other conversations. But if we think we're going to have the entire conversation and figure it all out before mid-September, we're not. And if we continue to buy into that lie, we will bear witness to a modern day Holocaust, and it will be forever stained in our history as humans.
Yeah, my concern is that our governments appear to be motivated by the desire to have been on the record for criticizing and opposing it, and even pacify some opposition by pretending that they want to stop this. But as you said, they go up to that little line, but they don't really want to put any pressure to stop this disaster. So it's it's very disheartening to watch this whole thing. But I want to thank you so much for sharing the story. And again, as I said before, it's not many people who come there with your military background and who've seen what you've seen. So I think it's very important, especially now that there's very little media which can access these things. So thank you so much.
Yes, it's as I've said to many others that no thanks needed. This is not my moral obligation. This is a moral obligation, period. I didn't ask to see what I saw. I wasn't looking to see what I saw. I wasn't looking for this. To be completely transparent, when I first got into Israel and we were going to do things in Gaza, I thought, man, we're going to save the world. We're going to feed everybody. Israel's doing the right thing. We're doing the right thing. We're gonna bring freedom and salvation. And we're not. So for anyone that thinks that I'm a politician or social media influencer, I have zero social media. I don't even have LinkedIn. Not looking for clicks or follows. Not at all. I'm not backed by anyone. I have no sponsors. I have no media firm. I have no PR reps. I have no lawyers. It's just the truth. The truth from someone that went in not looking for that truth per se, but the truth hit me right in the face and it can't be ignored. So what I'm coming forward with, it's a moral obligation. It's a moral obligation. So thank you for allowing me to share the story of humanity. This is not the story of just the Palestinians or of Gaza or of Israel. Humanity is on display. Palestine is a mirror of our human society. And right now we're staring into it. And it's not good.
Yeah, no, it doesn't appear that we're passing the test at all. So, nonetheless, thank you so much for bringing this to light. So,
Yes, sir. And I thank you for your time and the platform. And I think you have a wonderful platform, and I know it's highly respected. And thank you.